Let's go ahead and get comfortable for the meditation time we'll be sharing together here. Let's become aware of our breathing. And with every exhalation, letting go of any thoughts of the past or of the future, of whatever it took to get here this morning. Allowing ourselves to enter more deeply into this present moment. The only holy moment is right now. Allowing our minds and hearts to open and to relax and to give thanks for this precious opportunity of a human life, for this opportunity to grow in wisdom and compassion and awareness, and we give thanks for all the teachers in our life, especially the inner teacher, the awakened mind that is our true nature. We give thanks for all the teachings of all the traditions that turn our minds away from the delusion of separateness to the truth of the interconnectedness of all life. And we give thanks for this community, for this sanctuary, knowing that this outer sanctuary is a manifestation of the inner sanctuary, where we dwell always in harmony and unity with the infinite love that is the source of all life. We give thanks for all of our loved ones, and we give thanks for this beautiful earth and the life celebrating here. All the birds in the skies flying, the fishes and other animals in the oceans and rivers, the whole celebration of life throughout the earth. And the whole human family awakening to our place here. And we give thanks knowing that the light that shines at the heart of the universe is shining right now in our heart, bringing every cell in our being, every dimension of our life, all of our affairs and thoughts into alignment with the truth that we are. That what we are was never born and will never die. What we are is eternal consciousness, free and of the nature of love and awareness. And we know that we have a purpose for this lifetime, a unique reason why we are on this planet at this time, and unique gifts that we are here to bring forth. And we just allow the music now to open an inner doorway to connect with the truth that we are. Abiding in our true home, abiding in love, loving kindness, abiding in joy, abiding in peace and harmony, abiding in freedom, abiding in gratitude, abiding in compassion, abiding in the truth and unity, abiding in creativity, clarity and confidence, may all beings be happy and at peace. May all beings be free. May we all realize the original brightness of our own minds and hearts, and may we continue together to build a more enlightened society. a world that reflects the truth of our true nature, a world that cares for everyone. We give thanks knowing that we are part of an awakening of humanity, that we may live our lives celebrating the truth that we are as manifestations, the inner Christ truth. We give thanks knowing this is so. And so it is. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us here this morning, and I'd like to go into a piece of original music to lead into the talk this morning. And so the basic idea on this piece of music is to invite you, as you're listening, to listen with your intuition. And by that I mean to just allow the music to perhaps evoke imagery or feelings and see what comes up as you listen to the music. The sense I have actually over the years is that music and art actually both are languages of intuition. Words can be languages of intuition too, but I think music and art especially, wherever you go in the world and you find a sacred tradition in that part of the world, you'll find sacred music and sacred art as part of the efforts of people to connect with a deeper reality and a deeper understanding that we have. And so I'd like to dedicate this piece of music to the healing of all of our relations. And I think I'll play a piece we call The Garden. The melody originally came to me when I was right around the time I met Madeline. In 1990, I was in Ukraine, and this melody came to me when I was playing concerts for peace there. We can perhaps our thoughts for peace to the world, to those places where there may be conflict and the illusion of separateness. And invite you also, as you're listening, to see what messages perhaps come to you as you're listening to this piece. This is called The Garden. It's so great to see, being in Florida now, everybody has these gardens. Eating our smoothie this morning had fresh collard greens from the garden where we're staying. So in a sense, our lives, I think in many ways, are a garden, and this community obviously is a garden. And the idea is to really allow ourselves to grow and to plant seeds that will bring forth the kinds of crops and fruits we'd like to see growing in our garden together. Enjoy. Thank you very much. Thank you all again so much for joining us here this morning. And so in the short time we have, I'd like to share a few thoughts about awakening our inner genius, connecting with our intuition. Madeline and I will be putting on, as you mentioned, Reverend Rose, our workshop this afternoon. And a couple of the main points, I think, that are always important and helpful to remember. First of all, it's wonderful to be in a unity ministry. And I think it's always helpful to remember that as we're gathering here this morning, we're part of a much larger movement. And Madeline and I have been blessed to go to hundreds of churches over the last 25 years, all over, in every state except North Dakota. I don't think there's one there yet, but when we get one, we'll go there. Fargo, maybe they'll get one. And also, actually, many countries. We were not too long ago in Australia, and it was great to see the movement there, too. And I think in many ways, unity is one of the healthiest movements in our society in the sense that it's not based on this sense of we've got the one right answer. It's based on the sense of inclusiveness and a sense of honoring and respecting the traditions of the world. I remember when I was a kid in New England growing up, I went to a church where the basic thing was we had our creed, and the idea was if you would just believe this and swear you believe it, you'll get to go to a special heaven that's just for us, and that kind of thing. But in unity, there's a sense underlying everything that it's essentially about education in the ancient sense of drawing out from within us our true nature and understanding that and doing that in a community that is respectful of everyone and of all living beings. And the sense of radical inclusion, I think, is really implicit in Jesus' teaching. So one of the things I think that we see when we study the scriptures, not only the Christian scriptures, but the scriptures of the world religions in general, typically, is that there's always a calling to allow ourselves to be free, or to free ourselves from the illusions that in many ways are injected into us by our society. So traditions around the world talk about the importance of leaving home, of questioning the underlying assumptions of our society. And in Unity, I think, Charles, how many of you have been to Unity Village in Missouri? Some of you. If you haven't been there, it's kind of like you get like Mecca. You got to go there once in your life. And it's really a beautiful place. In fact, it was originally Unity Farm, and the whole idea was it was a big garden, and it still is a garden. I mean, it still is a very beautiful, lush place with lots of animals and wildlife and so forth. And Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, the co-founders of Unity, originally saw Unity as an educational ministry, really. And Charles said, he's kind of famous for saying, I want to go straight to headquarters, himself, right? The basic idea is that each one of us is completely free to make our own authentic connection with what we feel or understand as what is divine. And so, essentially, when we look at the teachings, for example, of Jesus, we see this essential idea that we are called to love God, right, and love our neighbor, right? Isn't that the two main things? Love God and love your neighbor. What does that actually mean? I think loving God, there's all kinds of, different ways of looking at that. But my sense of it is that is a call to awaken to and connect with and appreciate the transpersonal dimension. That which is beyond the persona. Persona is the old Greek word for mask. And so as long as I'm wearing a mask, and in general in our society, this is what we're in many ways forced to do growing up here. We're taught that we need to fit in and be successful and do what we're told in the various ways from the Walmart ads and all the other things. Buy this and you'll be happy and so forth. But to actually connect authentically with the dimension of consciousness that transcends the mask, which is our true nature. And this really is where intuition comes in. And I think we all know in our bones, actually, we just feel this, that there's no greater gift or nothing more valuable to us as human beings than an inner knowing that we can learn to connect with and rely upon, that will guide us to live our unique life, the life that we are uniquely here to be living. And that doesn't mean that life is necessarily going to be always easy, but it does mean that we're living authentically. And I think this is the greatest gift we can give to others. And whenever anyone does that, we naturally encourage others to do the same thing. And intuition is the inner knowing that we can connect with that guides us to live our life our unique life. And I think also it is really the force, the inner knowing, that guides us to live a spiritual life. And I would say that without intuition, really there is no spirituality. How can there be? Because what is guiding me as I go through my day? It's basically either the cultural program, right? I mean, all of us are born and we are just blasted with all kinds of stories and shoulds and ought tos, and we get a name, we get we get, and unfortunately we get wounded a lot as little kids. We get blamed and shamed, and you got to compete with each other and so forth. And so quite a few things happen to us, and so we end up being sort of propelled through our life, trying to get what we want, trying to keep away what we don't want, and this kind of struggle. In the Buddhist tradition, this is basically this kind of life, actually, is referred to as samsara. Samsara in Sanskrit means suffering that never ends. So the basic idea is if we're at the level where we feel fundamentally separate, and we're following the cultural program of trying to get what we want and manipulate each other's and ourselves and the image that we're portraying to the world to get what we want and so forth, this is going to not be satisfying. It's going to be either grossly or subtly very unsatisfying. That's called dukkha in Sanskrit, which basically is the conditioned existence. However, the underlying idea that the Buddha and Jesus both pointed to is that it's possible to awaken to the kingdom of heaven, or however you want to look at the awakened nature within ourselves. And this is where our intuition comes into play, because if we're not being guided by the cultural program, then we're actually then relying on our connection with our own inner wisdom, the truth that we are, that is eternal. And that requires that we learn to quiet our mind, because our mind is, my old Zen teacher said, it's like having a popcorn machine that you can't turn it off. It's like, oh, he's got another thought coming. And those thoughts are powerful, and they propel us to say things and do things, and pretty soon we're off and running, and our days are going by, and a popcorn machine is just boom, 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 boom. But if we can learn to quiet that down and connect with what is really ours to be doing, and what are really our thoughts and feelings, then we begin to connect with our intuition and be guided that way. And I think it's very important for us. How many of you do have some kind of a meditation practice? Some of you, I hope. I think it's really a very important foundation for sanity. Remember what Krishnamurti said. Krishnamurti said, it's not a good idea to be well-adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And this basic idea is very important to understand. It's not a good idea to be well-adjusted, because the programming will pretty much want us to be well-adjusted to whatever society we happen to be born into. Yeah, I think it's very clear that our culture needs and is calling for also some deep change, positive change, and for us to be able to be, as Gandhi said, the change that we would like to see in the world requires us to connect with our intuition, because otherwise we're just the culture happening, right? We're just, the Walmart ads are taking root, and we're just going to live that way. So to actually question the official stories of our society, the ways we treat each other, the ways we treat ecosystems, the way we treat animals, the way we treat ourselves, and connect with our intuition, which as we teach in Unity, is essentially the inner Christ, which is based on an awareness of not just an intellectual sort of knowing, but a deep intuitive understanding that what we are essentially is far greater than what we think we are. For example, there's this old saying in the Buddhist tradition about a footprint, which I think is really a good illustration in many ways. If we're walking on the beach and we see some footprints in the sand, we recognize that the footprint that I'm seeing there is not the one who made the footprint, right? We see that it's just a foot. We don't say, hello, George. Well, look at you this morning. You're looking a little sandy or a little shallow or something. We actually know that being that made the footprint is not right there in the footprint. Well, when you're looking right now here, this is a footprint waving his or her hand right now. You cannot see me, right? We cannot see each other. We can't see the being. We see a footprint. We see a manifestation in the physical reality of an eternal being that is of the nature of love and joy and freedom and abundance, awareness, creativity, who is, in a sense, manifesting through a physical vehicle in order to express and to learn and to contribute, essentially, to the unfolding of consciousness here. And so when we learn to look with eyes that see beyond the surface level, to see the truth, then we see love. And we see with eyes that bring healing to others. We don't see someone who is sick or overweight or underweight or old or whatever. We see the being. And when we address that in others and see the best in others and when we look in the mirror, we do the same thing, then we naturally begin to create space for healing for everyone and to create the actual foundation of awareness that what we are is manifestation of this infinite love, and that our life is an adventure of awakening to this truth. And so the underlying idea that Jesus was pointing to essentially is that loving God is connecting authentically with our intuition, with this wisdom that is our true nature, that is not affected by the cultural programming, that does connect us with the higher knowing that's essentially feminine. We'll go into that this afternoon. It's essentially feminine, this capacity to be receptive, whether we're men or women. And then what comes out of that is the other dimension of the teaching, which is to love your neighbor. And that when we do that, we begin to see that this manifestation that I am, if I identify only with that, right, this is me, and I'm going to get, if I have to hurt you to get what I want, well, by God, I'm going to do it, because I'm what's important. That is a recipe for samsara, essentially, suffering that never ends. And it's based on this delusion. So we begin to look with eyes that naturally wish the best for others. We see that if I harm another to get what I want or to improve my own welfare, I'm actually harming my own welfare. In the long run, as also every religion has taught us, whatever we sow, we will reap, and probably twice as much. So the whole idea is to, if we want to be loved, be loving. If we want to be free, then free others. If we want to be abundant, then be generous. Whatever we do, it does come back. And I think the other thing that's inherent in all of this really is the idea that when we do actually take time to quiet our minds and dig down deeply to the core of our being and really connect with what is our essence, we will begin to recognize that our essence essentially is joy. That at the very center of the being that we are, the foundation, is a bubbling spring of joy that needs no reasons in the outer world at all, that this is our true nature. We have to work very hard, and we do, to keep that all covered over and forget it. We think, oh gosh, he should have done this, and if he'd only done that, if I would have done this, and I hope he doesn't do that, and if she does do that, then I'll do. And pretty soon, we've covered over the bubbling spring of joy. But to actually, again, as individuals, make the effort to connect with our true nature and allow that to be what brings our life moment by moment into being, then we begin to be guided by our intuition, and when we do that, we create a field that automatically encourages everyone else to do the same thing. And so a community like this is so precious. I think the unity movement and unity churches and other movements, obviously, that help people authentically connect with the teachings in a way that is not dogmatic, in the sense that we're not telling you got to believe this or you're going to burn or something. The idea is that let's discover the truth together. And so I'll just maybe close with a few notes from the road here. Madeline and I have been traveling for 25 years, and it's kind of an interesting thing, this metaphor of travel, this metaphor of pilgrimage or of journeying. And a lot of times I think we come to this earth and we're born, and it's kind of traumatic. We're in the womb and everything is great, and then all of a sudden we start to feel pressure, and pretty soon we get forced out of this paradise that we're in, and we're slapped around and who knows what, and pretty soon we're find ourselves in being rejected sometimes, and so we're essentially traveling. We're essentially travelers, I think, and we travel through experiences. We may live in one place, but for us, living on the road in an RV for 17 years, we just recently, a couple of years ago, actually got a house in Northern California, but we're still doing a lot of traveling. But I remember for myself, when I was a little kid in Concord, Massachusetts, growing up, I was born there. It was, in many ways, it was a neat place to land, on this planet, because there was this whole sense of revolution, like in the 1700s, 1775. Remember that poem? Hardly a man is now alive that remembers the famous day and year of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. Anyway, that was all about Concord. And so every April 19th, which was Patriots' Day, my father would get his
gun off the wall, and they put on his Minuteman outfit, and we'd all go down to the Old North Bridge in Concord, and we'd shoot at the redcoats from Britain, and send them back to, we'd celebrate the revolution because they were, we wanted to have freedom, So the idea was, well, if you have a situation that's unjust, then you should do something about it, right? And then a few years later, like maybe almost 100 years later, there was another revolution that was kind of centered in Concord, which was the Transcendentalist Revolution. We had Emerson. So I was born in Emerson Hospital and learned to swim in Walden Pond and went to Thoreau School and Alcott School. There was this whole feeling of being raised in the lap of the Transcendentalist movement. And they were the first ones, actually, in North America to bring the ideas of Asia from Buddhism and Taoism and Vedanta, various forms of Hinduism, to this society with some really wonderful truths that are very powerful for humanity and very much part of unity. The idea, for example, from the Taoist tradition that God is principle, this impersonal principle that we can align our lives with, or the idea from very powerful in the Hindu tradition that God is equally female as male. Oh, that's a good one. And the idea from the Buddhist tradition that God is mind, this infinite mind. And so for me, though, growing up there, I was somewhat aware of this, but when I went away to college in the early 70s in Maine, I suddenly felt this yearning within myself to really understand what they were driving at, And so I started reading a lot of these books and Zen and other books, and the whole thing kind of coalesced in this one book, I remember, that really kind of put it all together for me when I was maybe 20 years old, and that was a book called Cosmic Consciousness. Remember that book? By Richard Buck? And he basically said, he was a Canadian back in the late 1800s, and he said most people attain, pretty much everybody, what he referred to as self-consciousness. That's basically caring about myself. Here we are, we care about ourselves. Good for you, Okay, so that's where most people are at, and that's why we have some sorrow, why we have this endless suffering. But he said certain people had attained what he referred to as cosmic consciousness, which is a qualitative leap beyond, and it takes an effort. And he said, but through this effort, these people, great founders of religions and saints and sages and poets and mystics, both men and women, had attained a qualitatively higher level of awareness where they lost the fears that we usually have of death and of losing and gaining and all these things, where they really were living not just for themselves but for everyone, and to bless the world. And they had an intellectual illumination and a moral elevation that really created them to be living examples of what he called cosmic consciousness. And the basic idea in the book was that this is the destiny of humanity. This is the destiny of each one of us, essentially. And that's why we're here on this planet. We're here to attain cosmic consciousness. Everything else, essentially, is a distraction away from that. And and we should remember why we're here. And so I remember this is right. It felt so right to me when I read this. And so I remember going back home on the holidays and vacations and things and talking to my parents about this and telling my father, Dad, don't you know about cosmic consciousness? That's really the most important thing while we're here. And he said, son, I'm paying a lot of money for this education. And I really don't know, if this is really going to help you out in the long run and getting a job and all these things. But anyway, to my delight, my younger brother Ed, when I talked to him about this, he went, yes, let's do it. Let's attain cosmic consciousness. Like, all right, So as soon as I graduated in 1975, we talked about it quite a bit, and then we couldn't. The idea is, it's a great idea. Like, we're going to attain cosmic consciousness, but the basic idea is, well, what do you do? Well, what do we do now? So we thought about it for a while, and then we came up with we knew what to do. What you do if you want to attain cosmic consciousness, and it's 1975, and you're in Massachusetts, you just go to California. Travel, let's get out of here. Traveling, that's why it is. You travel in the outer world, but it's really represents sort of an inner something. So anyway, we actually walked down the driveway, had some fresh baked cookies from my mother, and a little backpacks, and headed west. And we got, after about a month or so of walking and working our way west, we got as far as Buffalo. And in Buffalo, it was freezing. It was October, so I thought, well, I've got a bachelor's degree from a very good college. I can figure it out. We better head south now. It was October. So we headed south, and we walked about 15 or 20 miles every day. We didn't have any money. We just walked in faith. We were meditating. We were doing this practice based on Ramana Maharshi from India, who was a great sage. And he said, what you should do is you should just ask the question and go deeper and deeper with it your whole life. Just find out. The question is, who am I? What is this? What is this? What am I? And so that's what I was doing. We were just thousands of times a day. We were doing this, and we were walking down through upstate New York, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, into Kentucky, across through Appalachia, into the Bible Belt. They said, now, boys, you're in the Bible Belt. I didn't know what that meant, being an Episcopalian from New England, but I found out very quickly that meant they try to save you every night, You've been saved. I was not used to that kind of thing. But anyway, we kept going, kept working our way through, and eventually we ended up at a place called The Farm. And The Farm in 1975 was the largest hippie commune in the world. It was about almost 1,000 people, and they were all from California. So we thought, well, we met you guys halfway here. That's great. And eventually, we stayed there for a few weeks, I guess, and then eventually ended up at a Zen Center in Alabama. And you probably think I'm lying now, but there was a Zen Center in Huntsville. And then eventually did get out to California, ended up actually living in meditation centers, and actually ended up shaving my head and becoming a Zen monk in Korea. And then eventually, get back and get my PhD at Berkeley and taught college for quite a few years. And then I decided, to travel, and I felt the unity was this beautiful field, really, of people who are authentically yearning to awaken the spiritual dimension, much more than most college students I was teaching, actually. So I thought, what? This is really great. So I tried it for a year. I lived in that, I don't know if you remember that old 1971 Volkswagen bus I lived in for quite a few years. Met Madeline, anyway, Madeline came over. She moved into this Volkswagen bus. That was I had two drawers, right, for clothes. I actually gave her one of my drawers. So, that's for her clothes. So we really got along pretty well from the beginning. But anyway, so actually we've been traveling now for 25 years to Unity churches. And along the way, of course, wrote the World Peace Diet, which has now become a #1 Amazon bestseller. It's now been translated into about, I guess, almost 15 languages. And so it's been, in a sense, this ministry that's sort of unfolded out of traveling, and I think also out of somehow connecting with intuition. And the thing I'd like to just close with here, the final thing I want to say, really is to just remember, like my own memory of being, walking and having no reason to be happy, right? There's no reason to be happy. Here we were, my brother and I, on the road. We were somewhere, who knows where, in Pennsylvania or West Virginia somewhere, walking on these little back roads. We had no money. We had no security. We didn't know where the next meal was going to come from. And I remember I was just so happy. I was just, these waves of joy would just come bubbling up inside of me. And I think it's because I was living my life, right? I think all of us, when we actually trust our intuition, what it will do is that you will live your life. It does not mean, it does not mean there's security or anything, but it's your life. And I think all of us, when we live our life, we will feel a basic sense of happiness and gratitude and connectedness with something greater than just the illusion of being struggling around trying to get something for myself. We're actually here to contribute something, to find the unique gift that we're here to give, and then to make an effort to persistently to give it, right, and to keep discovering what it is. It's something every day we learn and deepen and develop our ability to do that, and as each one of us does that, we keep alive the inner joy that is our true nature and the inner sense of gratitude. And when we do that, we essentially, as I said, create a field around us that naturally encourages others to do the same thing. And when we have a whole community of people who are doing their own inner work authentically, spiritually, in the privacy of your own prayer and meditation and reading and studying and so forth and creative work, then we create a community that actually does manifest and does radiate, I think, into our world blessings that are far greater than we realize. And so I think coming to this planet, this earth, which is really struggling right now under the terrible weight of centuries of delusion and power struggles that are in a technology that's very primitive and in many ways gobbling up and harming so many things. And so what we see is we've come here and we are awakening and questioning and encouraging each other to do that as we do it ourselves, and we create a field of healing. And so I think there's no greater gift we can give the world than to do this authentically, and I want to just close by thanking all of you for making the efforts that you're making, for finding your way somehow through the door, because I know if you did, you're already well on your way to living the kind of life that will allow our children and grandchildren to live here, that will create the space of love and kindness for non-human animals and for future generations and for hungry people and for the whole web of life to celebrate life here as we are intended to. So much love to you all, and thanks again for the great work you're doing. Bless you. Thank you.